The Green Bay Packers surprised everybody last year. Jordan Love took the next step in his development. He looked very good last season. Now we're to the NFL draft, and the Packers needed to get him some more weapons. Prior in free agency, they got him Josh Jacobs. In the draft, in the third round, they got him another running back, Marshawn Lloyd. Marshawn Lloyd's no slouch running back either. He's got some goods to his game, but we're going to look at his advanced metrics. We're going to look at his athletic specs. We're also going to look at what the coaching staff is saying about him. But before we do all that, you need to click that subscribe button right now because we're talking about these rookies every single day this offseason. You need to know what your players are looking like before they take the field for your team. But we're going to start things off with head coach LaFleur. See what he has to say about Marshawn Lloyd here.
I think he's a piece that, first of all, he's big. He's 220 pounds. He's got really good speed, and I think he gives us an element out the backfield. He really showcased that the week of the Senior Bowls, especially in the one-on-one situations that he was in, and just gives us a little different flavor maybe. I sure do. He definitely can be a weapon out the backfield. I love his just all the measurables. He's a 220-pound back that runs 4.4 and can run routes out the backfield. So I think he could be a matchup nightmare for opposing defenses.
The same reason why he likes Marshawn Lloyd is the same reason why I like Marshawn Lloyd. Tremendous size, adjust athleticism, can catch the ball well out of the backfield. If you get him the ball in space, he's going to eat chunks of yards. On top of that, he can grind it between the tackles. He's an all-purpose back. And if they need to rely on him, if something happens to Josh Jacobs, he can be their guy. And this is something the team's been needing for a little bit, considering A.J. Dillon hasn't been getting the job done the last few years. And Marshawn Lloyd could be the next man up for this Packers offense if something happens to Josh Jacobs. But now we're going to move on. We're going to listen to the offensive coordinator, see what he has to say.
I would like to get him out there as much as possible. I think, he's got a skill set that's a little bit different than AJ's as far as his speed. He's not quite the bruiser that he is, obviously, but he's got a different type of skill set. So it'll be nice to get him the ball in space and just see what he can do. Because I think he's going to add a good explosive element to the offense for sure.
He's reiterating some of the stuff I just stated. He's good in space. He's explosive. Something different compared to A.J. Dillon. If something happens to Josh Jacobs, they could use those two as a combo. If not, Marshawn Lloyd may be the main back over time in that situation. However, that speed, that pop off the step, gives them something different out of the backfield, something for them to develop, and gives them more upside. But looking at his size, adjusted athleticism, 4.46 40-yard dash, 93rd percentile size adjusted speed score. So he's up there among running back prospects. And now the Packers has one of the best backfields in the game. Even without the backups, Josh Jacobs alone puts him there. Marshawn Lloyd, one of the top prospects, especially when you look at the size adjusted speed, 220 pounds and runs a 4.46. Then you got A.J. Dillon as a banger. You're kind of like scratching your head when you mention A.J. Dillon, but now he doesn't have to be the clear-cut RB2 on the team. He can mix it up with Marshawn Lloyd if something happens to Josh Jacobs. This team can still flow with the football. I get it, Marshawn Lloyd's coming in as a rookie, but rookie running backs, they can be plug and play at the NFL level, especially if something happens to the incumbent starter. But Josh Jacobs, we're going to talk about him a lot going forward here. But looking at Marshawn Lloyd, 820 rushing yards last year at USC, 232 receiving yards at South Carolina. The volume wasn't really there, but 573 rushing yards in 2022, 5.2 yards per carry, but the yards after contact. PFF had him at 3.97 yards after contact with 47 missed tackles forced. Even at South Carolina, 4.05 with a lot of missed tackles with 39, and that was just on 111 rushing attempts. But you go over here, he's graded with a 4.2 yards after contact per attempt, one of the tops in the class. Average is 3.3, and then on top of that, positive run rate, 47% is average. He's at 49%. one of the tops in the class as well. Also, when you compare him to some of the other running backs at the top of the list, he's got higher draft capital. It's him versus Jonathan Brooks, but he has a better yards after contact per attempt. So when he grades out with this class, he grades out as one of the better running backs in this class in some of the advanced metrics. But when you look at the Packers here, they have a very high run rate still, as they're running it on 43% of the time. Middle of the league, but pushing more the back end of that middle. But A.J. Dillon last year saw a 51% snap share to Aaron Jones's 46%. The thing about that, Aaron Jones was dealing with injuries, but also Josh Jacobs is here. I believe, and it's common sense almost, that they're going to run Josh Jacobs into the ground. They're going to give Josh Jacobs all the workload, as much as he can handle, and A.J. Dillon might siphon a little bit. Look for that snap share to get diminished. They're not going to bring in Josh Jacobs for him to get a 50-50 split with anybody unless Marshawn Lloyd really exceeds expectations. But Josh Jacobs is going to get every touch imaginable. But if he breaks down, then Marshawn Lloyd's probably going to get his opportunity, considering what we saw out of A.J. Dillon last year. And looking at Josh Jacobs, he can handle a heavy workload. And the Packers saw that. They wanted that. They got their quarterback. They got a good young wide receiver core there that they can lean on. And they got Josh Jacobs, the veteran running back here, who they know they can lean on for a lot of touches. They want to run him into the ground. They want to give him a lot of touches. They want to use him in the passing game. He's getting a lot of targets, 54 targets last year, 64 the year prior, and 64 the year before that. He's getting a lot of use out of the backfield as a receiver. On top of that, in 2022, 340 rushing attempts. So Josh Jacobs is a candidate to lead the league in opportunity share this year, touches and targets. Josh Jacobs could be doing that here with the Packers. I do not see them picking up Josh Jacobs to just give him half the workload. He's getting a ton of it. He's getting a lot of work. They're going to run him to death. And if we see death, then we're seeing Marshawn Lloyd, because it's not going to be the A.J. Dillon show. And then on top of that, the Josh Jacobs contract, they got an out on him after the season, but the contract extends out to 2027. He could be there for a short time. He could be there for a long time. But they're going to run Josh Jacobs to death, and they're going to see what's going to happen after that. And the thing is, A.J. Dillon's there. We know he's not going to carry the full workload. I know they don't want to do that because they haven't been wanting to do that with one running back this whole time. But when you got a guy like Josh Jacobs who has the history of that, who has been dynamic and efficient, you're going to want to lean on Josh Jacobs. So really, Marshawn Lloyd's production going forward, his impact in this offense, really depends on Josh Jacobs, because they're going to lean heavily on him. They're going to run him into the ground, as they should. They paid up for him. You don't usually pay up for running backs in this era. They did it. And when you pay up for a veteran running back, you're going to run him into the ground. You're going to use him. You're not going to park that running back in the garage, cover it up, and never use him. You're going to run him to death. Josh Jacobs is going to get a lot of workload. Expect him to get a lot of touches. Expect him to help this offense. If he does get ran to death, and when death happens, or if it happens, Marshawn Lloyd's going to get his opportunity. Marshawn Lloyd has a lot of size-adjusted athleticism, a lot of pop in his step. He's a home run threat and catches the ball well out of the backfield. If that happens, you could see a young running back explode on the scene, because that's part of his upside. So you need to keep an eye on this Packers backfield in training camp, minicamp, just to see what happens, what goes on behind the scenes, especially if he starts usurping A.J. Dillon. If that starts to happen, then he's going to start gaining more trust, and then maybe getting more opportunities in game, splitting a little slither of workload with Josh Jacobs here and there. And if something does happen, you got a young running back that might pop off on us, and you got to pay attention to that. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure you hit that subscribe button on the way out. One thing for watching. Catch you on the next video.